Ding. All right.
Hello,
Back.
sir.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. Sorry to cut you off there. I guess we're getting back at it. We're gonna come back at you with a Jeltz here. For those of you who are uninitiated, the Steve Jeltz Appreciation Society, named after one of the worst players to ever lace them up for the Phillies, but he stuck around for years, and we both have some kind of weird affinity for him. So
Yeah, and I don't know that we actually give the guy enough credit. I think both you and I have it in our heads that he was, one of the worst. But in all reality, he's probably, in that era of Phillies. Now look, let's not kid ourselves here. The guy had 3 separate seasons with the Phillies where he hit under 200. As a lifetime Philadelphia Philly, he hit 213 with 5 home runs. His 162 game average for the Phillies rolls out to 210, 1 home run, 29 RBI. So while he might not actually be the worst, it's pretty darn close.
yeah, if he's not the worst hitting non-pitcher that they've ever had, he's damn close. One day we'll have to actually sit down and do a Steve Jeltz centric episode and actually give because we've talked about certain things, like he's like an insurance salesman or something now, or I forget. We went through and we talked about how he the one year was that he hit both of his home runs in the same inning or something like that.
Yeah, there's some really weird things with him. Like the guy in his career hit a grand total of 5 home runs. So I mean, it's and all with the Phillies.
Fucking inning. So
and here's the crazy thing: he hit 5 home runs in his career, and 4 of them were in the same year.
Oh
so
he only had 1 multi-home run season in his career.
Yeah, here's his home run totals by season: 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 4, 0.
First, I thought you were just speaking binary.
Yeah, I was getting there. Beeple double bleep. But yeah, no. So yeah, we'll have to deep dive on kind of his career after baseball and just really dive into his numbers that really aren't much to talk about, but it'll be fun anyway.
Yeah.
But speaking of kind of poor numbers, you shot me a text late last night, and kind of an idea about looking at players that may have excelled in Philadelphia, but maybe didn't pan out so much elsewhere. Or maybe we can revisit some that we've talked about previously, whether it was on here or on our regular pod before we started doing sports-centric ones here on the Jeltz, is that players that maybe were superstars elsewhere, maybe even led Hall of Fame-esque careers, but for some reason they strapped up some kind of Philadelphia uniform and it just didn't work.
They completely shit the bed.
Mm-hmm. But before we get into that though, we do have to mention a former Philly is playing baseball tonight.
Yes, Shane Victorino, the Flying Hawaiian himself, lacing them up for the Savannah Bananas. If you're not familiar with the Savannah Bananas, I'm very sorry for you. They are fantastic. They're like basically the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. And they're just phenomenal. Like if you the stuff that they pull off, it's amazing. The other night, the last clip I saw from the game actually wasn't them. It was the Party Animals, which is their Washington Generals, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
The dude was tap dancing between pitches. He legit had tap shoes on, and they put a little tap floor out, and he was dancing into the box, and then he'd swing. Like it was ridiculous, but it was awesome. And like they're just known for this fantastic form of baseball. They call it banana ball. And it's really, if you haven't seen them before, if you're not familiar, do yourself a favor and look them up because they're super cool.
Yeah, any of the YouTube clips are fantastic. They've had the pitchers on stilts. They dragged out Bill Lee, who's like a 75-year-old Red Sox. Yeah, Danielle just pointed at me. He's like, "Did you see Victorino?" Which is funny because that's how we kicked this conversation off. But no, they've done some really fun things. They drag out and play against or play with other former major league talent. I know Johnny Damon has played with or against or whatever.
I think he should be against them.
Yeah, 100%. But no, it's really cool. They do some really neat things. And they have some unique things too, where if a fan catches a fly ball, obviously being a foul, it's an out. So really,
that's
really.
You know what I think they should do, and I think they would be missing they're missing out on an opportunity if they don't do it. They need to have a game against the 93 Phillies.
Yeah, I guess everyone's still left or close, maybe.
I mean,
gosh, I don't know.
Dutch is gone.
Well, he's gone. Yeah, most everyone's got to be still around though. But I don't know. Could you imagine John Kruk lacing him up one more time?
I would love to see it. I would love like even if it's just like even if it's just an inning. I would just absolutely love to see, because think about it. I mean, they were the party animals of their time, and
that's true.
So I would that would be super cool to me.
That would be awesome. But no, it's cool stuff. So props to Shane for going out there and doing that with them. That's awesome. Yeah, exactly, and that's. It's really the way baseball should be. I mean, I get it. There is more over the top, and like you mentioned, the Harlem Globetrotters, and there definitely is a place for that sort of thing. It's a lot of entertainment ahead of sport. But that said, though, like sometimes MLB gets so. I love baseball. I love it to death, but it gets so dragged out. It can be very boring at times, and a lot of times the umpires and management just takes the fun out of it. Right. In so many words, like, oh yeah, let's make this 1-0 game even more, boring than it already seems to be, particularly for people that aren't baseball fans.
Right.
Especially
like if you're trying to introduce a kid to it or something like that. God, you're really hit or miss whether or not they're going to come out with a good experience their first time to the park, or if they're going to come out like, why did we do that?
That's why baseball in Philadelphia has always been fun, because we had the Fanatic. As long as we've been on the planet, we had the Fanatic, and so even in the downtimes, at least going to the ballpark, or at least being able to watch, they would occasionally show Fanatic clips on TV during the broadcast or before the game, and just adds a layer of excitement to it.
Right. I mean, and honestly, not for nothing, but I feel like there's the other sports. They're like football. I love football. I love the Eagles. I would go to every single game if I could. But honestly, the best experience to watch a football game is at home, on your couch, or at a bar somewhere. Like, it's not in the stadium, because you're not getting – I mean, now it's a little bit different because they've got these screens that are like the size of my house. But, it doesn't give you the best views, but it's a cool environment to be in. Right. Baseball – there's just something about being in the stadium, doing the 7th inning stretch, hearing getting the opening lineup, seeing the pitchers start up in the bullpen, being able to catch a foul ball, that kind of stuff. There's just something to it. It's just, and if, especially in the Phillies case, with the Fanatic there, and then the ballpark is great. And just the smells and the sounds of the ballpark that you don't get at home. So, not like in Oakland where it's the smell of the sewer coming up through the
and the reason why the team is leaving. One of the reasons anyway. But yeah, no. So let's kind of dive into our topic at the hand. I know you had sent me that message last night. So I'll let you kick it off here with, something about these players, like I said, either one way or the other, that just, excelled in Philly, didn't pan elsewhere, or, obviously were superstars elsewhere, didn't pan in Philly, or maybe just superstars that were players that were supposed to be superstars, maybe through a draft that the Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, Sixers made, that just like, you know what, that didn't happen at all for anybody.
So, all right, I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off positively on this one for Philly, and we got to go with the top of the line. I guess it would be the way I would put it. The number one guy, the man himself, good old number 9, BDN, Nick Foles. And if you look at his record, and then this was what really made me think about it. So if you look at his record with the Eagles, he was 25-13, 69 touchdowns, 28 interceptions, and a 94 passer rating. And obviously, with one of the greatest postseason runs of all time, culminating in a Super Bowl MVP and a Super Bowl win. And then you look at with his other teams, right? He's with the Rams, Chiefs, Jaguars, Bears, and Colts. He's 8-18, even with 24 touchdowns and 24 interceptions, and a 76.9 passer rating.
Yeah.
And think about the things that he did with the Eagles. He had 7 touchdowns in one game. He had 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in that same season. Again, had one of the best postseasons ever, and that was in his second stint in Philly. And he flamed out as a starter with the Rams, and then went to the Chiefs as a backup. Like, this dude is either on point or on the bench, really. And it seems like he's only on point in Philly. And I don't know, it's not like it was the coaching staff, because he went, he was a starter with us under his rookie year, I believe, was with Andy Reid. And I think his second year was actually with Andy Reid too. I could be wrong on that. His second year was with Andy Reid too, because he won the last game that Andy Reid won as an Eagles coach was the game in Tampa that I went to, where he threw a last-second touchdown to Jeremy Maclin to win the game.
Was that what? Was that 14 or 13 or 14?
Yeah, I think it was 13.
Yeah,
it was 13 or 14. Yeah. And then he left, or he played for Chip, and no, I'm mixing something up here. I'm missing something. But in any event,
Chip. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, Chip. Okay, so you're good. You're on the right track here, because 13 Eagles was the last. No, excuse me, that was the 12 Eagles. That was the last time he was there with Andy Reid. So the 2012 Eagles was Andy Reid's last stint or season with the Philadelphia Eagles. Went 4-12, and then gone to KC. Chip Kelly comes in at 13, so that's Foles' second and third seasons in the NFL, and obviously with Philly there. And then that's after the 14 season is when Foles gets shipped to the Rams and Kansas City, and then back to Philly. So oddly enough, Foles plays under Andy Reid the season before he comes back to Philly, and the next couple of years are quite interesting for him.
Yeah. And so he's just a legend in Philly, and just some schlub off the streets everywhere else. And it's just, I've never seen another quarterback that's had that much of a difference between playing in places. Who can you think of that's like maybe Steve Young, between when he was with the Buccaneers and when he was with the Niners?
Let's look and see. We can pull that right now, actually. Let's look. So Steve Young as a quarterback with the San Francisco 49ers went 91-33, which is just ridiculous. With the 2 years in Tampa Bay, 3-16.
Yeah. And that could be
a lot of things.
Because Tampa was terrible.
team around him. Those were his first 2 years in the NFL. I mean, you can really, chalk up a lot of things. And here's the crazy thing too. You have to think too. Steve Young basically was, 86, second year in the league. He was Tampa starter. He went 2-12, started 14 games. But then in 87, 88, 89, 90, and I believe it got into 91, 90, 91 even, maybe, because 92 was the year that I believe he became the full-time starter for the 49ers. And he was under the tutelage of one Joe Montana for a lot of years there.
Never heard of her.
Yeah, he's some guy, car salesman or something. I don't
know. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. He's somebody that was like that, but it wasn't like he went to multiple places. Nobody is quite like Nick Foles. Who was the other guy? Vinny Testaverde. So Vinny Testaverde was with the Bucks, and he went to the Browns, and he was with the Jets, and he had a smattering of success here and there, but he was. I mean, he never had the level of success that Nick Foles reached. He never reached the heights that Nick Foles reached. He had a long career. Very long career, because he was 80 when he retired, but
just about.
He was using a walker in the last season to get around. But nobody has had that same level, has reached the same heights and hit the same lows as Nick Foles in one career, really.
Right? Yeah. No kidding. You're exactly right. He'll always have kind of that place in everyone's hearts in Philly, and I think that's why the rumors flying around now of him making even a third stint over. There's a reason for that.
Right.
Look, the guy won a Super Bowl for us in Philly. You just proved your point there. He's a proven winner in Philly. I mean, without a doubt. Would he be a great, capable backup? Of course he would. Now's not the time. I think we've obviously that ship sailed. But that's the reason why those rumors and those, kind of like, hey, look, dude, would I think it would be awesome? Of course I do. But it's just not now. And thank you for everything. But
the only way I want to see Nick Foles back with the Eagles is in some kind of coaching role.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree.
I mean, he is a coach's son, so he may eventually go that route. But honestly, dude, the only thing that's going to do, that would be us stepping on our own toes.
Right.
Because you've got a good young quarterback, right? And what happens with that good young with the last good young quarterback we had? Nick Foles came in because he got hurt. Nick Foles came in, had success, won the Super Bowl, and at that point, our good young quarterback's confidence was shattered, and he rushed himself back from injury, never completely healed, and the rest of the story. Now, do I think that would happen with Jalen Hurts? No. I think Jalen Hurts is a different cat. I think he thinks different. He's got a different mindset. I don't think he's threatened by anybody on the roster, really. No matter, you could bring Tom Brady back out of retirement and make him the backup, and I don't think he's looking over his shoulder 1 second, because he's just got that kind of confidence about him, and he's that good of a leader. But at the same time, we don't need idiot drunk fans out there chanting for Nick Foles to go in when Jalen Hurts throws an interception in preseason, So
yeah,
just let Nick either ride off into the sunset, play for a different team, or if he comes back here, make it into coaching position. Aside from that, the only time I want to see him is when we're celebrating the anniversary of the Super Bowl win.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you on that 100%.
When he gets inducted into the Eagles Hall of Fame, obviously.
I want to take kind of the cheap route here, because to kind of stay on topic though with this. And while not nearly as heralded in Philadelphia, still holds a much better career record. I would say much better, but at least more accolades anyway, with exception to some numbers in Indy, being Carson Wentz. And I only bring this guy up in the sense of this guy was never going to be, Mr. Stud, number one quarterback in the league, but he was, to me, was going to be very serviceable and can win a lot of ball games. And I think he somewhat proved that fairly early on. I want to go back to the Super Bowl winning season. His quarterback record through the 13 games that he played before he got injured, before Nick took over, he was 11-2. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Again, we can go all day long about team wrapped around him. Obviously, Nick took that team, ran roughshod through the playoffs and ultimately beats, Tom Brady's Patriots to win the Super Bowl. But there was a lot to like off that run. It was crazy. I believe in his spot there, he led the league, I believe, in QBR that season. That's how good of a season that was. Now, so much that the next few seasons, though, after injury, and we can go about being rushed back. We can talk about, not having a line and being sacked a million times, because that certainly happened to the guy too. There was a lot of different things we could talk about with him. Played very mediocre, really, for the rest of his time in Philly, and so he was showing the door. Jalen Hurts gets the starting job, and so he goes to Indy, and then actually doesn't do awful necessarily. Goes 9-8. And I say awful. Look, we just talked about Steve Young's second season in Tampa, going 2-12.
Right.
9-8 and 2-12 are different animals. So I can't sit here and say all day long I can be like, oh yeah, 9-8, Carson was terrible. Look, he played a middling football season, but that's not what they were looking for out of him. So then he gets shipped off to Washington, and that was a absolute disaster last year.
Yeah,
and it's like So at this point, it's like you go from being okay to then running a lot of mediocrity, and then boom. So you have flashes of brilliance in Philly. You really set the world on fire during the season that they won the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, he was hurt with it, whatever. And then boom. I mean, it's over. I've never seen somebody go to be multi-million-dollar talent to basically unemployment football line. Very hard to get there, especially at the level he was playing, to go from starter to basically not a thought in that short amount of time.
Well, and I'll say this for him, because I was a huge Carson Wentz fan, and my vision of what happened is differs a little bit from your explanation, and I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But my thing was his rookie year, House of Fire, showed glimpses of what could be. Started off really good. Was if not for one Dakota Prescott, who happened to come into the league at the same time, probably wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, or at least challenges for it. He started off. He and Dak both set the he and Dak were both going for the first, so many passes thrown before you throw your first interception record. Dak ended up winning out on that one. And there was a lot to like, and I saw a budding superstar. So much so that I ordered his jersey, his rookie year. And then the second, 2017 comes along. Holy shit. He's even better. He's even better than I thought he could be. And he's doing all the dynamic stuff. He's running. He's throwing. He's just throwing these fucking absolute ropes to people. He's making plays that I don't think many other quarterbacks could make. And he did it, and everybody seemed to love him, and everything seemed to be going great. And then he gets hurt. And I think this is the first time. You think about the school that he came from, right? was it North
Yeah,
Dakota?
North Dakota State.
Right. How much? Obviously, he had some kind of competition growing up, competition at that school, but I don't think on the scale that he had it. I feel like he kind of never really dealt with adversity. He had injuries coming out of college and stuff, but nothing like he had at this time, and nothing at the level that he had where he kind of I don't I, you know, he was in the middle of a dream season,
Right.
and then for that to be
Right.
taken away from him and then
And
handed it to somebody else, and then so he watches his backup win over the city, win the Super Bowl, win the MVP. And the whole time he's got to be thinking, that should be me.
right.
That should be me. And then, so all that offseason, he deals with hearing people talk about, well, Nick Foles, maybe we should trade Carson. Maybe we should trade Carson. Maybe Nick Foles should start, you know? So I think that's when the doubts started creeping in and the issues started creeping in with him. And then he rushes himself back. I don't think he was under any pressure because remember, he didn't start week 1.
No,
He didn't. I don't think he was at week 2 or week 3 before he even came in.
He
And
only
then,
started. Yeah, I was going to say in the year after the 18 season, he started 11 games. So I mean, it was a little while into the season before he,
well, no, he came back and then he got hurt again.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he came back and he got hurt again.
Oh no, he did. Okay, hold on. I'm looking at the schedule. No, hold on. I was looking at the schedule to see if I could figure out. Yeah, no, you're right though. Yeah. Go ahead.
So he rushes himself back, forces himself back before he's ready. He's not. His throwing motion was off. He was using more. He was using his back more. He was torquing his body to compensate for his leg and not being able to drive with his legs to throw the ball and generate the velocity that it needed to. And he ends up breaking a bone in his back.
Yep.
And then it's a domino effect from there. He's just at that point, then the fans start turning on him. Nick Foles leads the Eagles back to the playoffs. He ends up winning a game, and then they go to New Orleans, and they were, arguably an Alshon Jeffrey drop away from making it to the next round. They still would have had the score. There's still other things that would have had to happen, but it's a hell of a lot more likely if Alshon Jeffrey catches that football.
Right.
And then, so after that season, there's issues. Foles is dealt away to help calm Carson's nerves, right? And then what happens? Then that season, Nick's the man, or Carson's the man, and they go into the playoffs again. And Carson seemingly willed that team to the playoffs. There was a run at the end of the season where he was killing it. And he set the record for passing yards for an Eagles quarterback. And he was killing it. They get into the first game. It's his first home game, first game playing in the playoffs. And then Jadeveon Clowney fucking cheap shots him and gives him a concussion in the game. And then Josh, what's his name? He played for like every team. He was like 80 years old too. But he comes into the game, tears both his quads or tears his groin off the bone or some shit. And then the Eagles don't score. I don't think they scored a touchdown. I think it was all extra or all kicks. And then the next season they draft Jalen Hurts because you got to get a reliable backup. And then that was when Carson fell apart. And I don't think he's put it back together since then. And I think that I don't know. I don't know how things play out if Carson doesn't get hurt in 2017. I don't know that we win the Super Bowl. I really don't.
That's the thing too. Like my thing with him is that he oft injured. He's glass basically. I mean, it was unfortunate. I mean, like cheap shots, or wasn't there a season where he led the league in getting sacked or something crazy like that?
Probably the 2020 season.
Yeah, there was some insane thing with him. I believe it was the 20 season, and the guy was just not destined for. To me, like I said, I don't think he was ever destined to be a number one in the NFL. And coming out of what you already mentioned, coming out of North Dakota State, and only reason why is if you're looking at coming out of North Dakota State, number one, you're coming out of the MVC. You're not talking about a power conference. But two, he had 1.5 seasons of really playing starting quarterback football there.
Right.
Basically, it was very minimal during his freshman, sophomore years, which is not uncommon in college. Let's not get that, past that point. But has a heck of a junior year, which is pretty much the reason why he gets drafted and plays half his senior season. So has a season and a half of college football really under his belt before the Eagles take him as second overall pick in 2016. So look, who knows? If he didn't get hurt, the Super Bowl thing could have changed for the Eagles. Obviously, we don't know. I don't really want to speculate on that one necessarily because that's long gone. And, yeah.
Now, the only thing I will say is what really cost him in Indy was losing that game to the Jaguars. They were in a win and you're in situation.
Yeah, there was a winner out. Yep.
Right. And the Jags fucking throttled them. And it wasn't particularly it wasn't pretty. There was nothing. It was just one of the worst games where you have to step up in that situation. And he didn't. He didn't do it. He had a costly turnover, or I think several costly turnovers, cost his team the game, and he cost himself a starting job with the Colts. They had no choice.
They lost 20 that game. They lost 26-11, and Wentz's line in that game was 185, a touchdown, a pick, got sacked 6 times, and lost a fumble.
Right.
So, and even on paper, that sounds better than that game was. Those stats don't do that justice.
Because it was not even that close of a game.
Oh no, it was. I remember watching that one as we get a lot of Colts games here, and that was, and I obviously wanted to see him succeed, but that was not meant to be. Goes to Washington and done. It's pretty much over, Johnny.
Yeah, he's a free agent now. Nobody has really brought him into camp, and we'll see if he ever.
No, I've heard there's rumors were flying around about the Packers bringing him in. I guess under Jordan Love. I don't know what.
Hey, you know what? Let him, because honestly, if I feel like that's a good spot for him, because the Packers are not that bad of a team. And that might be a place where Jordan Love, Jordan Love gets hurt or doesn't perform, because Jordan Love, this is the first extended look at Jordan Love that anybody's going to get.
Yeah, exactly. So you have Jordan Love starting, and then really your current backup on the depth chart is Sean Clifford, who was just drafted out of Penn State in the 5th round, and then your third string right now is Danny Etling, who came out of the 8-team draft in the 7th round. And I'll be dead honest with you, I don't think I've ever heard that name in my life.
No, I haven't. All right, so let's go on. I'm gonna change sports here. There is another Eagles quarterback we need to talk about, but actually there's 2 other Eagles quarterbacks we need to talk about, but this is not the time for them yet. I want to change sports and talk about one Mr. John Van Beesbrook, who was lights out, eliminated the Flyers from the playoffs in the Eastern Conference Finals one year, and was just fantastic. He was okay with New York. He was never great, really, with the Rangers, which ended up getting him exposed in the expansion draft. And he goes to the Florida Panthers, where something clicked. And he turned it on, and he ended up getting himself a nice lucrative contract in free agency where he cashed in, played for the Philadelphia Flyers, and was not the same goalie at all.
Yeah,
Not even,
I'm on hockeyreference.com right now, and I'm looking at his years with the Rangers and the Panthers and the Flyers and so forth. And yeah, not very good.
no, no. And that, let me tell you, as a young, at the time, somewhat young Flyers fan, I'd seen all kinds of goalies, and I was like, Hextall was my favorite, and then we got Beezer. I'm like, holy shit! Wait a second, you mean John Van Beesbrook? We have a legitimate goalie besides Ronnie Hextall? Holy shit! When did this? How? Wait, what? How did this happen? And I was so fucking let down. That was Christmas morning when I found, like, not actually Christmas morning, but it was Christmas morning to me when I found out that we had gotten John Van Beesbrook. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Obviously, I didn't say that because I was but a wee lad. But
That's possible. That was in the 98-99 season.
Oh no, I was probably cursing a lot. But no, dude, I was stoked. I was super happy that we had gotten John Van Beesbrook because that was, so if it was the 98-99 season, you said?
Yeah, so he came on board the 98-99 season. He just finished his tenure, had spent 5 seasons with the Panthers.
Okay, so then 96-97, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals and we lost. We got our doors blown off by the Red Wings. And then the next season we came back and we weren't good. We weren't great. I don't even know. I don't remember if I think we made the playoffs, but I'm fairly certain we made the playoffs. But I also believe that might have been was that the Lindros? No, that wasn't when Lindros got the concussion and almost died, right?
I'm not sure on time.
I'll have to. But anyway, in any event, goalie was our weak point. And so, oh no, I think that was the year that we had Garth Snow in net, and we played the Sabres in the playoffs, and there was a massive brawl, and Garth Snow fought Dominic Hasek. But so the next year, to come back 2 years after getting our doors blown off and having goalie been one of the worst parts of it, we got John Van Beesbrook. Well, fuck, we're gonna win the Stanley Cup. You put this one in the bag, fellas. We got this. No, we did not have this. Not even a little bit. It was terrible. It was horrible. I thought I was being punked before punked was even a thing. Like, it was. I couldn't believe how badly he played for us. But such is life as a Philadelphia Flyers fan.
Right.
So.
And the overall, going back to that first season with the Flyers actually finished second in the Atlantic that year. But if you look at his numbers, they're just not good. And especially coming off of what he was doing with Florida. You go back to his Florida numbers real quick just to kind of make it a point. He had finished, and this even dates back to his time with the Rangers, in 5 of the previous 6 seasons, he had finished within the top 7 in the Vezina voting. So it's like he was very heralded. Had a third place Hart Memorial Trophy vote back in 93-94, and even had a couple of All-Star nods. Actually, several All-Star nods, I guess you could say.
So I mean, the Hart, for those of you who don't know, the Hart Trophy is the MVP of the league. The Vezina Trophy is given to the best goalie in the league. So these aren't like little tickets. It's not like he's getting the Lady Bing Trophy nomination given to the person with the best sportsmanship. He was like going after legitimate shit here.
Yeah, and when I say All-Star nods, it's not like he's necessarily making the All-Star team year in, year out here. He's just finishing closer to the top in votes. And when he was a member of the Flyers, that was non-existent.
Right. Because he was fucking hot garbage. He didn't deserve to be an All-Star.
No. In fact, the last time he even sniffs any kind of recognition award wise or all-star wise goes back to his time in Florida, 96, 97. And his career kind of, once it flamed out with the Flyers after a couple of seasons, becomes an Islander and then a Devil, and then it's over.
Right.
So
just stuck around the Northeast for a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. He's one of those long-term players. So he started when he was 18, played a cup of coffee game with the New York Rangers in the 81-82 season, comes back at 83-84 for a couple more games, and really becomes a starter in 84-85. Has a long run with the Rangers before he even goes to Florida. So he was well seasoned by the time he even touched Philadelphia. So I think there's some, I don't know, reservations if you really look at it from this time frame now. It's like, wait a minute. How many years does this guy have in the league before he even straps on skates for the Flyers?
Which, and honestly, at that time, that's how the Flyers were. Ed Snyder was trying to do anything he could to win a cup, but he was doing so many things that were so misguided. Like he was telling his GMs to go after guys like Tony Amani and Paul Coffey and these dudes that were done. They were done, like years ago, and or 2 or 3 years prior. And he was scooping them up at the trade deadline. He was scooping up these players, or he was signing them the contracts and stuff. And they were good players. They were all-time greats, but they weren't when they got to us. And it was just, it's sad because it was such a great organization for such a long time, and it's just gone downhill. It was heading downhill then. But ever since Ed Snyder died, it's almost like the Flyers died. They're just,
right.
They haven't, the ownership doesn't know what the hell it's doing. The GMs have been shit. The coaches have been shittier. And so I'm just hoping that this time around, hopefully they got it right, and we'll see what happens. But all right, let's enough doom and gloom. Go ahead to your next player.
Yeah, no, I had a hard time really thinking. I want to jump over to baseball, and I was trying to really think of players because I could make the easy, well, I could say Ryan Sandberg right here. Make that, oh, well, he played 6 games for the Phillies and, then becomes a Hall of Famer for the Cubs. That's not really fair. And I could say that for several different players, and you could go back and forth on certain ones. I was looking, though, and one really stuck in my head, and maybe not so much by the numbers, but more for the performance and what we got out, especially at the end of his time in Philly. It was Jose Mesa.
Yeah.
The guy was an all-star. He was an two-time all-star coming out of Cleveland. He floated around before he came to Philly, but really had a couple of decent seasons. In 01-02, not bad. Sub 3 ERAs. But if you look back at the Phillies back then, the 01 Phillies were middling, 86, 76. Not a whole lot going on anyway. We go to the 02 Phillies where he had another decent season. They were, again, 500 team, 80-81. But then it really fell apart for him in 03. And I think that's where my memories more come in, because the Phillies were kind of coming back around. They were 86-76 again, 10 games over 500 that year. Just the NL East was kind of tough at that time because you had a really strong Braves team, and then the Marlins ahead of them. So the Phillies, obviously weren't sniffing the playoffs necessarily. But Mesa didn't help matters in a year that they, could have potentially made some kind of run. Kind of looking back on his numbers, very reminiscent of like post-World Series season Brad Lidge. 5-7 for Mesa with a 6.52, and just not good. The 31 walks to 45 strikeouts. I saw that number, and that's what really stuck out to me. It was like, that's what I remember about the guy. I don't remember anything he did the 2 seasons prior. I remember that being that bad. I remember him getting booed out of the stadium a couple different times.
Not Philly.
And the guys, like I said, the guy's a two-time All-Star. He had some really great seasons prior. Once led the league in saves, and actually saved a lot of games in Philly. But then just I don't know. It's something about his tenure as it finished up. And again, not as heralded as his time in Cleveland. Obviously, there was no awards coming his way, but I just remember him just really bothering me. And it's like, you should be a lot better. And I don't care where you're at your point in your career. I know he was getting toward the end of it, but the Phillies were actually fairly competitive, or getting to that point. It was just before the glory years started, and it's like, man, if you'd had anyone else, like, you probably could have won. I don't know, like, let's see, what was his WAR that year? It was not good. His WAR that year was -2. So, just not good. You easily could have had a handful of more wins without him even touching the mound.
Right. And he, at one time, until Jonathan Papelbon came along, he was our all-time leader in saves.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy has like a
He held on a year or two too long. I mean, and he was with us when we made our first, entrance back into the playoffs since '93, but it wasn't in a starring role.
No, I think the thing that bothers me more about him too is that, look, you have a bad season in 2003 with a team that was 10 games over 500. But then he can save 43 games for a Pittsburgh Pirates team in 2004 that was 73 or 72 and 89.
Right.
Like, has a heck of a season. Like, why didn't you do that? You could have made the Phillies a 90-game winner.
Right.
and may have had, may have made a difference enough to make a playoff push. I don't know. I don't know. I think that's why he kind of sticks out to me as someone that I'll never remember, and even with his two previous seasons of having decent numbers, just no.
All right, so let's talk about a couple. I'm gonna bundle these two together. A couple all-time great Eagles quarterbacks who had.
I'm gonna guess one of them. Can I guess one of them first?
Yeah.
QB Eagles.
Yes.
All right.
So
I knew you were going to go with him. I'm trying to think who the other one was going to be, but
two all-time greats had opposite career trajectories once they left the Eagles. Okay. So first one, obviously, Randall Cunningham, QB Eagles. He had some great years with us. Unfortunately for him and us as fans, he kind of got screwed when he was here. Number one, the guy that was like a father figure to him, his quarterback coach in his formative years as a quarterback in Philly, dies, right? And that was devastating to him. And it was devastating to his development as a coach, because he was also the buffer between Randall and Buddy Ryan, who Buddy Ryan, notoriously gruff, notoriously anti-offense. He was a defensive guy. Couldn't give two shits about the offense, just wanted it to run. So much so that Rich Kotite was his fucking offensive coordinator. So Randall's here. His development is stunted by having to deal with Buddy and Rich Kotite, right? He ends up leaving here and goes to Minnesota, where has a career renaissance, makes playoffs, has success as a passer that he's never had before. He always showed flashes. He had these exciting talents, and he had these abilities that were unlike any other quarterback we'd ever seen before. But he could just never put it all together. And he never really had the offense around him to be able to put it all together. Think about it. When he had Chris Carter had to be cut because of his drug problem.
Right.
And then he goes to Minnesota and has the best version of Chris Carter.
Yeah.
And he has Chris Carter. And he ends up having this team around him that's just fantastic. And he kills it. and he has the best years of his career. But then he does the one unforgivable thing that I will always hold against him. And at the end of his career, he prolongs it by going to the Dallas Cowboys to be their backup.
Yeah, it's funny. For some of my feeds on these, I've seen lately about athletes in the wrong uniform. Like, athletes don't look right in a uniform because they did go and play. So Randall Cunningham to me will always be Philadelphia Eagle green. And to even think about him in a Cowboys uniform is still sacrilegious, even though it happened. Right. It's insane. Absolutely insane. It's different thinking about a player like who's another one that traversed? Herschel Walker, I think, is another one, right? He traversed both. Yeah. But I can still see him as a I can see him as first. Yeah, right. And that's why I can see him as the Cowboy.
Yeah.
But I can also see him as the Eagle because he had very pretty good success with us too. And there's certain players I can see like that. T.O. is another one. I can see him in different uniforms, no problem, but also as an Eagle. 49ers, yes. Eagles, yes. Those types of players. Randall, though, decides, as you said, prolong the career, goes to Dallas, and then finishes in Baltimore, which is even stranger to me.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking with that, but so we've got Randall, right? And then we've got Donovan McNabb.
Okay. I'm thinking you were going to go that route, but wasn't entirely certain.
And Donovan McNabb, whether you like him or not, the stats bear out that he was one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever put on the midnight green, right? He may be a lot of things that we're not even going to get into on this, but he was an all-time great Philadelphia Eagle. And then the Eagles did something that I never thought they would ever do. And they traded him to the Washington Redskins. At the time, the Redskins. Right. The Commanders. But that was, I thought, when my dad told me that, I thought he was screwing with me. Because I was outside. I remember specifically, it was Easter Sunday. My grandparents were down. We were all hanging out. We were on the lanai, and then came inside, and my dad goes, "Hey, Donovan just got traded." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, Donovan got traded." I'm like, "Get out of here! Who did he get traded to?" Washington. I'm like, "No, he did not. The Eagles would not
You're
trade
lying.
him."
Stop joking.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And then, well, hell, I thought we were the dumbest franchise on the face of the earth. I'm like, what are they doing? How are you going to trade him in the division, you stunad? But
boy, did it work out.
Right.
Yeah,
they were right.
Goes 5-8 as a starter in Washington. Still goes for over 3,000 yards passing, but his touchdowns to interceptions not too good, 14-15. So,
he did manage to beat us, though.
Yeah, well, they still as a starter he went 5-8. So, but then even crazier though is as you mentioned, Cunningham goes to Minnesota. So how awkward is that now McNabb finished his career in Minnesota? Right. That's odd.
So he goes up there because I think that's when Brad Childress had gone up there, if I remember correctly. And he goes up there to try to be with Brad Childress, and it did not work. It did not work even a little bit.
He flamed out there. That was the end of his career. It was 1-5 as a starter, and obviously, and not only that, in his 6 games he started, throws 4 touchdowns, which is abysmal. But just not a good. Yeah, that's a good one. Just flamed out completely. And here again though, you got to think about this too in terms of. Here's the one thing I like to think about him. I always saw him, granted he heck of a quarterback. But what I think is forgotten about him is very early on, especially in a lot of his early Pro Bowl run, and the playoff run there, Pro Bowl run, meaning the 2000 season to 2004 season. Look, the guy could run. He ran for 629 yards in the 2000 season, then had close to 500 yards seasons the next couple of years. We say this all the time looking at football running backs. There's a shelf life to them, 8-10 seasons max. There's a reason why Barry Sanders hung up the cleats after just a handful of seasons. There's a reason why certain ones
that's
just
can't.
The
Lions sucked.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. Though there's I don't think he was. I also think he realized too that he had a shelf life. He realized it, and a lot of running backs do that. And you see that from time to time. Again, look at all the great ones that we've seen over the years just flame out after a certain time. I'd like to think of Priest Holmes and those names that you see, and it's like, oh, they had great 5-6 seasons, and then boom, it's over. McNabb was a running quarterback early on, and then as that started to go down, obviously had to rely more on the arm. If you really look at his career statistics, he's only a Pro Bowler one more time beyond his 2004 season, and that was the season prior to him being traded. So it's, actually that was the season he was traded, I should say, right now, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. It really is. It's wild to think like maybe that's why they saw something like, hey, this guy maybe flamed his legs out, because of the type of quarterback that he was early on. I don't know.
Well,
I'm speculating.
And a lot of so Donovan got a lot of unfair and undue criticism early in his career because he was a running quarterback. And that was the narrative around black quarterbacks in general, was that always, the only way that a black quarterback can work in the NFL is if they're athletic and they run, because they don't have. And this was something that was actually said, is that a black quarterback will never win the Super Bowl because they're not smart enough to play the quarterback position. And obviously that's
so asinine. Yeah.
And so, but that was the thing, like where Donovan was starting to hear. First of all, Donovan started off his career. How should I say this? Our fans showed their ass thanks to Angelo Cataldi and his idiots at the draft with booing the pick at everything when Donovan McNabb was drafted. And that stuck with him. And I got to think that still bothers him to this day, And so everything he did in his early career was to try and win over the fans. And then eventually he stopped giving a shit. But I still think he carries that chip on his shoulder. But if you look at it, the unjust criticisms that he was getting was, oh, he's just a running quarterback. So what he did was, between the fact that he was trying to prove people wrong, that he was more than just a running quarterback, and also the injuries that he ended up getting, like the broken ankle, which I'll never forget. People can talk all the shit they want on Donovan McNabb, but he played a game, finished the game on a broken frickin' ankle, to quote, kind of quote Kurt Angle. He finished the game. What was it? I think 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 300 yards, something like that. Finished the game with a broken ankle, would not come out because he wanted his team to win. That was, and that's why I have such a hard time with the whole narrative around Donovan McNabb, about where people don't like him, or people, who we don't really know what happened with him and T.O. We don't really know what happened at all. But I've seen stuff out of Donovan where, yes, he's a jackass, but I'm also willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in certain situations. But I think he went from he let the outside criticism affect his career and affect the way he played the game. And I think that that's a big reason as to why things fell out the way they did. If he maintains that running style of play, if he was able to, maybe things turn out different for him. But he was hearing the people saying, oh, he can't throw the ball. He can't do this. He can't do that. And he was trying to prove him wrong. And I feel for the guy in that. You got to feel for somebody they're trying to do everything they can to win and to win over a city. And he's got his teammates publicly talking shit on him and saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just
no. No, yeah, no, it's a shame. I was always a big fan of his, and then of course, as time has gone on, we can, you know, obviously get on that one another time maybe. But look, during his tenure, the 2004 run with us was amazing. We had some really, really good seasons. And if it really weren't for him, I don't know that we would have had nearly any of that success. And it's a shame, he, the Eagles saw something there at the end of his career and was like, you know what, it's time to go.
Yeah.
But I'm going to finish this up with um, one more thought as far as I was curious to see your thoughts on this because we've really focused on a lot of Eagles quarterbacks here. We've talked Foles, we've talked Wentz, and we've talked, McNabb and so forth. But I was curious your thoughts. Is there anyone in the top of your mind baseball wise? Because Meso sticks at me as maybe more of a personal thing. Obviously, the numbers aren't there. I was curious for the Phillies. Is there anyone in your mind that's like, you know what, they were excellent for us, or vice versa?
So there's a couple guys. A guy by the name of Lance Parrish, all-star with the Tigers. He was an outstanding catcher with the Tigers, outstanding power hitter. Came to us and sucked ass. Von Hayes, again, all-star with the Indians, and a really good player for the Indians. And we gave up a fucking haul to get him, and he was not anywhere near what he was with the Indians when he came to.
We can do the Von Hayes one real quick here. It's interesting. He ends up spending 9 years in Philly, which is insane. I think we've even talked about that before.
Yeah.
To think about. The problem with him is that he's supposed to be like this heralded player. He finishes top 10 rookie of the year voting the time he comes over to Philly via the trade, which was, as you said, that was anyway. But he basically has a little bit of success in Philly, but he never ever lives up to the hype. And I think that's why he's always listed as like in the top 10 of most hated Phillies. You always see Scott Rowland on those lists. You always see JD Drew, even though whatever you can, about him. You always see certain ones, but he's always on there. It's because he never lived up to the hype. Von Hayes, 9 seasons. He leads the league in 1986 in runs and in doubles. Finishes top 10 in the MVP voting, and that's about the best season he has in Philly. 89, he's an all-star, and I guess that's just because they needed to have an all-star. Happened to be the year Mike Schmidt retired. So it's like, you have to have a Philly all-star, so let's give it to Von Hayes because he hits 259, 26 homers, 78 RBI. To me, it's very pedestrian. The 26 home runs, I guess, is what gets you the all-star nod. But he was supposed to be the superstar that carried over, after the glory years of the early 80s, that kind of, carried the torch, if you will. And this never lived up to that hype ever. And I think look, he wasn't horrible, but he just wasn't, I don't know. He's actually involved in some interesting trades too. Let's go back to this one. This is the two. So he's selected by Cleveland in the 7th round of the 79 draft. He gets traded to the Phillies in exchange for Manny Trio, George Vukovich, Jay Baller, Jerry Willard, and Julio Franco. So who would you have rather had on your team? Von Hayes or Julio Franco?
Yeah. I would have picked Julio Franco. Hell, I'd have picked his brother, Charlie Hayes.
Yeah, because Julio Franco goes on to play baseball. I mean, he could still be playing now for all I know somewhere. Julio Franco goes on to play baseball until the age of 49 in 2007 in the majors. Von Hayes, though, this is what you're going to hate even more. You ready for this one?
Yeah, let's go.
So when Von Hayes is traded to the Angels, any thoughts on who he gets traded for?
Von Hayes to the Angels. Julio Franco.
No. This is when he's traded to the Angels. The Angels send back 2 players for Von Hayes.
2 players for Von Hayes from the Angels.
One of them's Kyle Abbott.
I was going to say Jim Abbott's less talented brother, right?
Yeah, yep, that's one, Kyle Abbott. But do you know who the other one is? And if I'm not mistaken, this is where he gets his Philadelphia initiation. Yes, I'm correct. Ruin Tomorrow Jr.
I fucking hate Von Hayes.